collectors, and welcome to another Bossk's Bounty video, and welcome to episode 189 of Ask Bossk Bounty. This is the weekly Q&A series that drops every Sunday, where I take your questions from the comment section below and do my best to answer them. So if you do have a question for next week's episode and you want to be featured in the video, please leave that question in the comment section below of this video, and as I said, hopefully you'll be featured next week. With all that being said, if you do happen to enjoy this video, don't forget to drop a like down below, because that really does help the video and the channel, and subscribe if you are new. And let's get on to the first question. Jurgenheg559 says, "Hey Tim, love your videos. Question for next week. Since Anakin Skywalker appeared in the Ahsoka series in his Revenge of the Sith outfit, and it's soon 20 years since that movie came out, do you think we have to wait long to see him in the vintage collection again? He was my idol when I was a kid watching the prequels. Revenge of the Sith Anakin has been highest on my wish list for a TVC figure since I started collecting again. I think it's kind of weird that he's not mentioned in any of the pipeline reveals." Well, of course, we have had him before. I think it is, VC number 13 or something from the TVC 1.0 era, back in, 2010 now. That particular figure I've always felt could do with an update. I've never been too happy with the head sculpt on it. I don't think it has the greatest likeness. And also with the articulation that we're getting with the newer figures these days, I think a new Anakin would be absolutely awesome. But let me just say this very quickly about Anakin. I mean, the Ahsoka series, how cool was it seeing him in his Clone Wars attire? Now, it's made me appreciate this figure so much more. I've never really been a massive fan of animated figures in general. And with the vintage collection, of course, what they do is they make them have realistic interpretations of those animated characters, but they're still second or third down on my list of what I want. But I've got new appreciation for this figure because obviously it's now been in live action, and man did he look awesome. Also, Ahsoka in her season 3 outfit, I think it is now, was awesome as well. That episode of Ahsoka was just glorious. You know, we had Captain Rex in there, Phase 1 clones, ATTEs, we had gunships going on. I just thought it was amazing, and I just wanted to bring that up about this particular Anakin. Definitely appreciate this figure now, and he's going to have a more prominent place on my display. RT2D says, "Hi Boss, question for next week regarding card backs. We have just seen a fantastic card back for Obi-Wan Kenobi Showdown and an okay card back for the Vader. Given that Hasbro sometimes gets it very wrong, Leia Bespin, should Hasbro occasionally give the fans a chance to vote on a card back image, maybe to give us a choice of 3 images for a particular figure? I feel this would engage the fans more. Any thoughts? Regards, RT2D." Look, anything that gets the fans more engaged, I'm up for. I'm not too sure if Hasbro would be that keen on that, to be honest. And I kind of think picking an image for a card back can't really be that difficult, can it? I know they do get it wrong on occasions. They also get it right, let's be fair. But, you know, when we talk about the Bespin Escape Leia, this image on the screen now, this was just the obvious choice for me, and I can't believe we got what we got. And the same can be said for the Han Solo and Stormtrooper as well. I think there was just an obvious image for that. And there's other characters in the Star Wars universe that, you know, haven't got a card back yet, that if they did have, you could just imagine what it would look like. Krennic, for example. Let's wait and see what they do for that card back. But the one on the screen right now is personally, you know, the pretty obvious image for me. But we'll have to wait and see what they pick. But in terms of getting people involved, absolutely they should be doing that, getting the community more involved. But for something like a card back image, I just can't see them doing it, to be fair. I think they tend to like the fans to do the work, don't they? With our polls and March Madnesses and all that kind of stuff, they just take the data off and then do the things with it, rather than conduct the market research themselves. Phil the Force says, "Hey Tim, question for next week. In Ahsoka this week, Carson looked a similar proportion to Porkins from A New Hope. Do you think Hasbro might finally make both in TVC out of the same mould, adding different heads? Keep up the good work, mate." First of all, Phil, it's great to see you in the comments. You're a Patreon supporter of mine. I know you watch the videos, but it's great to see you in the comments as well. And thank you so much for the question. And yeah, I mean, it's one of them, isn't it? We would definitely like that, and we can sort of envisage them using the same sculpt. It fits, doesn't it? And to me, Carson Taver, is it? Taver? He's been in, 3 different series now? We've had him in The Mandalorian. He was in the Book of Boba Fett, I do believe. And now he's in Ahsoka. So if that's not a prominent character, I don't know what is. So come on, Hasbro, sort yourselves out. Give us a Carson Taver. And then, as Mr. Phil says here, make us a Porkins from A New Hope. Channel member Russell Banks says, hi Tim, great show, always a highlight of Sunday evenings. Question for next week, do you have any idea what, if any, policy Hasbro has regarding carded figures included with vehicles and playsets? As far as I'm aware, there was a lot of criticism that Antok Merrick was only available with his X-Wing, and they seem to react by including an uncarded Boba Fett and Slave 1 and Chewie with the ATST. Now they've pivoted back and put a carded Fat Bib with the throne room. So the only way to get this figure is spend over £200 on the whole set, or well over £100 on the secondary market. Cheers again and keep up the great work. Yeah, it does seem a little bit weird, and they definitely got criticism for the Antok Merrick, sort of like locking that figure away but behind an expensive vehicle basically. And I think possibly that's the only way that they could have really sold lots of that unit. It was a repainted X-Wing, we'd had it lots of times before. Of course we wanted the Blue Leader X-Wing, we did, but I don't think it would have sold as well had they not put that character in it, which is basically why they did it, isn't it? And you're right, they sort of responded to that criticism and then put loose figures with their Slave 1 and ATST. I think the difference being with the throne room is that, you know, I think we all know that it was a originally a idea for a HasLab that never sort of materialized, and they ended up doing it as a Pulse exclusive. So I think perhaps maybe Bib was maybe a stretch goal originally or something. It's a difficult one to take, isn't it? Because it is an expensive set. It's not ideal. I don't know what the policy is. I hope it doesn't continue. I don't agree with locking really, really good figures that everybody wants behind, or firewalling, or whatever it's called, you know, behind expensive or included in expensive playsets. I'm not for that at all. Rob Chewbacca Toys says, better question for next week. Tim, should Hasbro do mini HasLab sets with just figures? Yes, this is definitely something that the community is talking about. Dream figure packs. I think the only way that we're going to get, you know, maybe the whole of the Bad Batch all in one go, for example, is through a figure dream pack. You know, we've talked about the heroes, or maybe the Cantina aliens or something. Mini HasLabs like that, it's not ideal because we want figures just out on the pegs or in the line, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen, does it? So perhaps the only way that we can actually get those is by, you know, figure dream packs. So I'm all for that, and I hope they do it. James says, question for next week, do you find it kind of weird how we have gotten Vel Sartha in both the Black Series and the Vintage Collection, yet her girlfriend Cinta has yet to get a figure? I suppose it goes to show how the few Andor figures we have gotten in TVC don't really display with or correlate with each other well. Keep up the great videos. So this is my biggest bugbear with the Vintage Collection, and the fact that, you know, because the budgets aren't how we would like them right now, you know, we don't get as many figures as we'd like, and because of that they're stretched between lots of different medias, and therefore when we want lots of figures from one particular media all at the same time, so that we can at least create some kind of mini scene or diorama, it's just not happening. I think we've got 3 or 4 figures from Andor now, including the Clone Trooper, which just isn't good enough, isn't it? We're missing all of the main characters pretty much from that show. We're already missing some from the Ahsoka show in terms of the ones that have already been pipelined. Some of the main characters we are missing from the Ahsoka show. God knows how long we're going to have to wait to get those, and that is the depressing thing. And it goes back to the previous question about, you know, dream figure packs. Is that the only way that we can get them? Because it doesn't look like the budget for TVC is being increased enough to get all of these figures out. And Riley Bob has a question about the budget, and he says, great video as usual, boss. Question for next week. With the Vintage Collection now 3 for 3 on HasLabs and an ever-growing success in popularity in the Vintage Collection line, what would it take to get Hasbro to see the light and up the budget for the Vintage Collection line, even just be on the same level of figures per wave as the Black Series? Many Black Series collectors have switched to the Vintage Collection. We don't need to overtake, but would be nice to be at the same level as always. Cheers. And this is what I've always said about, you know, my campaigning or support for more from the Vintage Collection, to get Hasbro to give us more. That is never to take anything away from the Black Series. You know, I don't want Black Series collectors to be annoyed or be upset with what they're getting from their collections and what they're getting from Hasbro. But I've always just wanted, you know, a fair crack, parity, balancing the scales, however you want to put it. You know, I just want the Vintage Collection to get the same level of budget as the Black Series. And, you know, we bring up this figure a lot, but when we got this figure and he's got the incorrect legs and the Black Series gets one that's almost perfect, that just gives you the idea of where we're at. And would it have hurt just to have paid that extra bit of money just to give him the correct legs? You know, it's just that sort of thing. And of course, you know, going back to the previous questions about, you know, when new media comes out, whether it's Ahsoka or the Bad Batch or Andor, whatever it may be, the Black Series always does seem to get all of the characters pretty much straight away. In fact, the Black Series has all of Season 1 and Season 2 of the Bad Batch, and we have just Hunter, and that's it. And as I said in last week's video, you tell me how long you think it's going to be until we get the rest of the Bad Batch crew. I can tell you something now, it's going to be a long time. I just can't see them doing them, you know? And as time goes on, they just become more irrelevant. So, as I said, we want them to up the budget. Hasbro, if you're listening, you're probably not, but if you are, we are 3 for 3 with HasLabs. We turn up for these things, we back these things. You have made an incredible amount of money from the Razor Crest and the Ghost and the M1 Starfighter, and I think it's time once again to ask you to put something back for the fans. Callum Sims says, do you think we may get a Sabine with a speeder and speeder outfit, as that looked awesome in the show? Love the videos as always, mate. I've got to be honest, I can't see that one because I don't think it really had enough time, screen time in the Ahsoka series. I think your best bet for that is to get the 2015 Ezra speeder and just repaint it basically in the colours of Sabine. As for the long-haired Sabine, I think she's got the long hair while she's riding that. I don't think we'll get that personally. I think the versions of Sabine that we'll get is the one that we've got, and then, you know, ones from Rebels perhaps, basically. But, you know, I think that's it for Sabines from the Ahsoka show. Matthew Martin says, awesome vid as usual. Question for next week, do you think a Cobb Vanth and his speeder bike in a set would be the way to launch him into TVC? That speeder was epic. Yes, it would be a great way to do it. His speeder is awesome, I have to agree. Isn't it like the engine off of one of the pod racers or something? Absolutely awesome design. I think unfortunately the Cobb Vanth that's riding that has the Boba Fett armor on it, and don't ask me why. I just think that when we do get Cobb Vanth, we'll probably just get the sheriff version in his red jumper and scarf around his neck, just because I think, you know, we've got the Cad Bane. I just think that that's what they'll do, but we'll have to wait and see. Of course, I'm well up for more vehicles, and that is definitely one that I'd love to see. I'd love to see Mando's speeder as well to go with it. I mean, that would be awesome. You know, maybe do like a old school battle pack or something with both of those in there, but you know and I know that that probably won't happen. Pat McFarlane says, great episode as always, BB. Like many have said, your show is always a highlight of my Sunday. I really do appreciate that, buddy. Thank you so much. He says, question for next week, will Hasbro re-release the other Weequay from the skiff with the white top? I know he's quite expensive on the secondary market. Also, where do I get a Windswept Chewie figure for the skiff? He looks great. Cheers from the USA. So first of all, let's talk about Chewie, because this is actually from the Legacy collection, I do believe, and it's actually from the deleted scene. So you can see that he has his like bandage on his leg. So this is after the fact from the skiff, you know, because he gets shot on the skiff, doesn't he? In the leg, and then they bandage him up, and this is what you see in the deleted scenes. I use it on my skiff because when he's on the skiff, you can't really see the bandage. He's sort of standing like that. And as you say, the windswept look looks awesome on this Chewie. So that's where you get him from. That's the Legacy collection. As for the Weequay, you're right, he was expensive on the secondary market. He might still be, but will they re-release him? I think if they were going to, it probably would have been this year, would have been the ideal time to do it. And wouldn't it have been cool had they given you him instead of Rees in that 4-pack? Now that would have been a good thing to do. But if you do want this figure, then hop on over to tungori.com. They have him for $14.99 loose. I can't guarantee the condition that you'll get him in, because sometimes, you know, they come with like 2 left feet and stuff like that. But in the most part, I've never really had a problem with them. I know some people, when I've mentioned Tungori, they've said, oh, I ordered something and it never turned up. So I'm not endorsing them. I'm just saying they have them on there for $14.99. Members Only says, question, do you think Shin Hati and Baylan Skoll would be in the vintage collection line? They're the two that I would like most from the Ahsoka series. That is without a doubt. I think we're going to get Morgan Elsbeth instead, which just is mind-blowing to me. Like, you saw these two characters in the trailer. They are, without doubt, for me anyway, the two coolest characters of the show. Will we get them in the vintage collection? Maybe eventually. I don't think we're going to be getting them this year when we get all of the others from the Ahsoka series, so they might be added later on. Black series will get them though, won't they? 100%. Collect says, great video as always. I would love to re-ask a previous question, but I always have a new one and can't remember the previous. So anywho, if Hasbro was as serious about the background characters as they were back in the Legacy 30th collections, which scene do you think they'd finish first, taking into effect who has been made already? The Cantina or Jabba's Palace Barge? First of all, I would like to say that I would like both sets of those figures, you know, to complete both of those scenes. But if I'm Hasbro, I'm probably thinking more Jabba's Palace and the Barge, purely because they have got the Barge and the, you know, the Jabba's Palace now, basically. We need more characters for those, don't we? Do we have a Cantina, like a proper Cantina for the Vintage Collection? No, we don't. So right at this moment in time, I'd go for the Jabba's Palace. Scott Layton says, hi Tim, question for next week. When the Vintage Collection came back in 2018, I was under the impression that it would last a similar time span to 1.0, which was 3 years. However, the line is going from strength to strength, and with the recent announcements, there are no signs of stopping. How long do you think the Vintage Collection go on for before it's packed away by Hasbro again? So I think the Vintage Collection 1.0 was packed away because I think they said about, you know, the market changing, and essentially I just don't think it was making them as much money, or if any money at all anymore, which, you know, any sensible company, if something's not selling, they stop making it. They dumbed down the figures for the 3.75 inch Black Series. They brought out the Black Series, pumped all of their money into that. Then they made the 5 POA lines and everything for The Force Awakens and what have you. And then, of course, the Vintage Collection came back. And then since it's come back, you know, it whimpered for a little bit, but then obviously the community got behind it, demanded more from it, and we are where we are with it now. So how long can it go on for? I think, you know, as long as it's selling, I can't see it going away for the foreseeable future. Maybe another 2-3 years perhaps, because they do sort of plan ahead at least 18 months in advance. We've got the 50th anniversary of A New Hope at some point, haven't we? So, you know, can it last until then? That would be flipping awesome, wouldn't it? But you know, I think at the end of the day, with the 3.75 inch line, I think if you took away the card back, then, you know, 50% of the people that buy it would die off instantly, and that would probably kill that scale, unfortunately. I know it's a depressing thing to say, but I think it's the truth, basically. You know, a lot of people collect the Vintage Collection because of the card backs, because they look like how they did back in the day. So if you take those people out of the equation, and you're just left with the people that collect them loose, who maybe don't really care about the packaging as much, I potentially don't think there's enough people of those to sort of keep 3.75 inch a line. I might be wrong, but that's kind of my take on it. So I think Hasbro, you know, almost have to keep 3.75 on these card backs. Ted Matthews says, for your next Hasbro Q&A, can you ask the team to use the Specter numbers for the Rebels crew members on the card backs? For example, Kanan would be Specter 1 instead of a VC or HasLab number. If I remember to bring that up and I have a chance, I will bring that up for you, my friend. Personally, though, I can't really see them going past having, you know, HAS03, you know, to carry on from the Grogu and Off-World Jawa figure. I mean, why even bother naming them HAS01 if you're not going to do other HasLabs carrying on that number? I just find that bizarre that they wouldn't do that. When they mentioned the numbering, they were saying, oh, we haven't really decided yet. But I just think, you know, regardless of what any of us want, I just think it's obvious what they do, but that's just me. Jace9763 says, question for next week. I'm slowly returning to TVC after being largely a Black Series focused collector since its beginnings. He says, I really missed the world building aspects. I recently picked up the Dark Times Vader after seeing your review, and wow, he is really amazing. He certainly is. It's a great figure. He says, the Ghost has definitely given me a push as well. What are your personal definitive best TVC versions of Han, Luke, R2 and C-3PO so far to date? I personally still love the older OTC Han Solo. It lacks some of the modern articulation, but makes up for it with a great body sculpt. I replaced the original head with the newer head from the Han Stormtrooper, and he has become my definitive A New Hope Han. But I agree with your previous sentiments that we definitely need all new sculpts of the core OT characters. So yeah, I've got a few of them in front of you here. I mean, obviously not all of these are Vintage Collection. When you said like Vintage Collection versions, it's very difficult for me to do that because I just don't think any of them exist. And also, you know, I think we are talking about their A New Hope attire here. So this is what I'm doing anyway. So Han Solo, I mean, I know you said the body sculpt isn't too bad. I actually think this figure's always been a little bit on the skinny side, but in terms of Han Solo in that outfit, that is definitely the best that we have currently, for sure. But it just shows you how much he needs to be sort of redone. This is the Legacy Collection Obi-Wan Kenobi, or Ben Kenobi, Old Ben. This is probably the best one that we have at the moment. The hands are a little bit weird on this one in that he's sort of got his permanent sort of force thing with the fingers like this, and the way he holds the lightsaber is a little bit odd as well. So it's a decent Obi-Wan. I don't actually dislike this Obi-Wan that much. I think he's pretty cool, but in my opinion we do need a new one as well. Leia, this is care of Daniel Chart. Thank you, buddy, for gifting me this Leia here. This one is from the Vintage Original Trilogy Collection, very much like the Han Solo, and you know, in that outfit, that is probably the definitive one that we have. I know some people amend the Medical Frigate one, or customize the Medical Frigate Legacy Collection Leia, but in terms of that exact outfit, that's probably the one that we have. The R2-D2 from the Vintage Collection is probably as definitive as we are going to get at this moment in time. I do think he is over weathered in terms of all that oil and grime and things like that. I would love a clean version of him. C-3PO, this is the one with the Ewok chair, the throne or whatever. This for me is the best one I have at the moment. He's been re-released so many times, a couple of times in the Legacy Collection and things like that. So that's those ones. And then the Luke, which I couldn't find, there's a Legacy Collection Battle Pack, and that version of Luke Skywalker is personally my favourite definitive version of Luke Skywalker. I'll try and remember to put a picture up on the screen of him. I just couldn't find him because I'm in the process of moving collection rooms. But yeah, they're my definitive A New Hope heroes. Alright then guys, that's it for this week's episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you do have a question for next week's episode, please leave it in the comment section below, and hopefully I will get round to answering your question. I just want to thank everybody that did ask a question this week. It's really greatly appreciated, and it obviously keeps the series going. I want to say thank you to my Patreon supporters and channel members for supporting the channel in the way that you do. It is awesome, so thank you so much. Thanks for watching everybody, and we shall see you on the next one.